You did what they told you to do. School, then a job, discipline, delayed gratification, keep your head down, put in the years, and don't ask too many questions about where all the years actually went. And somewhere in there, you were promised something back. A place that is yours, some room to breathe, a future that isn't a question mark every single month. You did your part. Now, look around and tell me, did they do theirs? The deal. This isn't a new idea. It's an old one with a name. And the name matters because it means somebody already thought through the terms before you were born into them. Thomas Hobbes called it the social contract in the 17th century. His version was blunt. Outside of any system, life is short. So you trade away your raw freedom, and in exchange, the system owes you protection, order, a floor under your feet that wasn't there before. John Locke sharpened the terms a few decades later. His version added a clause that Hobbes left out. The deal is conditional. The system doesn't get your obedience forever, unconditionally. It gets your obedience because it protects your life, your liberty, and your property. Break that, and the people are allowed to walk. That clause is going to matter a lot more than it sounds like right now. For your parents, for the most part, the deal held. There were recessions and layoffs and bad years, but it held up well enough that it made sense to them. Work, save, buy, settle, retire. A single income could carry a mortgage and feed a family of 4. The contract cashed out often enough that nobody sat around interrogating the fine print. Because why would they? It was working. The surrender. Before we talk about what broke, you need to understand what you actually handed over to begin with. Because giving up freedom isn't an abstract line from a philosophy lecture. It's not something that happened to you. It's a list of specific things you did on purpose, one at a time. You picked the safe major over the one that actually interested you. You took the job with a fancy title instead of the job that would allow you room to think. You learned to sit in a meeting and nod along to corporate newspeak. Shareholder value, synergy, because fluency in that language was the toll you paid to keep your seat. Every one of those was a surrender. Small, individually. Freedom traded away on purpose, deliberately, because somebody convinced you the trade was worth it. Psychologist Erich Fromm wrote exactly this in his 1941 book called Escape from Freedom. And his argument isn't what people assume it is. He's not saying that people get dragged out of their autonomy against their will, like some external force enslaving them. He's saying the opposite, and it's much more uncomfortable. Raw freedom is heavy, undirected. Nobody hands you a script for it. No map, no guardrails. Just an open field and the full weight of every choice landing on you alone. So people trade that weight away voluntarily for structure, for a system that tells them what to think, do next, and promises them safety in return. You sold it at what seemed to be a fair price to a buyer who took the payment and never delivered the goods. But the surrender was voluntary, which means it was never actually gone. It was on loan against a promise. A promise is the kind of thing that can be broken. It's also the kind of thing that once broken releases you from the deal you made. Breach, not broken. What actually happened to that promise? Not things got hard, something more specific, and there's a name for it. In 1989, an organizational psychologist named Denis Rousseau studied the unwritten version of exactly this trait. He called it the psychological contract, the private, unspoken sense every person carries of what they're owed in return for what they give up. And Rousseau's real finding wasn't just sometimes contracts go unmet. Anyone could have told you that. Her finding was that there's a specific, distinct injury when a contract gets breached, when the other party had the deal directly in front of them and broke it anyway. Not through bad luck, but through a choice. Unmet expectations disappoint people, but that's a part of life. But breach does something else entirely. It makes people furious. And then, and this is the part that matters for everything that's coming next, it makes them disengage completely. That's the feeling you haven't had a name for. Not it's hard. Hard you can live with. Hard was always part of the deal. You sold something real. The thing you were promised in return never showed up. Betrayal. The squeeze. So let's name who's actually holding the other end of this deal. Not the system. Not society. Start with wages. You already feel your wage every month going less far. But what matters is where that difference is going. It didn't just evaporate, it moved. Rent, pension funds, insurance companies, asset managers own increasingly disproportionate parts of the housing stock, chasing reliable yields and turning housing into a product. The average age of first-time home buyers keeps rising and rising, so it stays just out of reach forever. Asset managers and hedge funds buying up homes at scale and renting them back to the people who used to just buy them outright. So the house stopped being a home first. It's an investment opportunity that happens to come with a bedroom attached. Debt, your car, your rent, your credit card. You're manipulated into over-consuming, and financial institutions turn your bad decisions into shareholder value. Food, the real cost increases everyone actually lived through, got used as a cover to also expand the margin sitting on top of them. Your grocery bills absorbed 2 price hikes stacked on top of each other. Only one of them was inflation. The other one was just somebody deciding you wouldn't notice or wouldn't be able to do anything about it even if you did. And taxes, steadily increasing, taking a larger and larger cut of the wage you generate by trading time of your life just to be spent carelessly, without respect for the people who actually earned this money, on wars and endless bureaucracy and phony government programs. This isn't a conspiracy. A fund doesn't conspire, it responds to an incentive. And that's so much worse, because a conspiracy can get exposed. An incentive just keeps producing the same outcome legally in broad daylight for as long as nobody changes what's being rewarded. Why bother? So watch what happens when an entire generation notices all of this at roughly the same time. Martin Seligman's original research on learned helplessness gets misread constantly as being about laziness or giving up. It's not. It's about what happens mechanically when effort stops producing results. The organism doesn't get weak, it gets accurate. It stops trying because trying stopped working. And continuing to try in the face of that evidence isn't discipline. It's just a slower way of losing. That's quiet quitting. That's spending on the thing that feels good right now instead of grinding towards a down payment that was never getting hit anyway, no matter how carefully you save. That's a fertility rate hitting record lows because most don't believe having a child is currently affordable. You're not watching a generation give up. You are watching a generation stop making deposits into an account that has already shown them repeatedly that it doesn't pay out. Something's on the horizon. Here's what's actually cracking underneath all of that. And it's got a name too. Psychologist Melvin Lerner called it the believe in a just world. The deep, mostly unconscious story that effort and outcome are linked. That the system is basically fair. That if you do enough of the right things in the right order, it works out in the end. That belief is quintessential. It's the thing that gets people to comply without anyone having to force them. And when it starts to crack, most people's first move isn't to blame the system, it's to blame themselves, because that's the safer, smaller, more familiar fear. The system is fair and I failed is a story you already know how to survive. The system was never fair means rebuilding everything you thought you understood. You're doing the harder thing. You're starting to point the blame at the actual target instead of yourself. This is not cynicism. Cynicism gives up on the possibility of fairness altogether. This is the opposite. This is the beginning of seeing clearly enough to actually do something about it. Take it back. You sold your freedom voluntarily and the buyer never delivered. Locke's cause from the beginning of this video matters here. A contract broken by one side doesn't bind the party who got cheated. Which means right now, today, freedom is still yours to reclaim. And while governments around the world are working hard on making freedom impossible, it is not yet. The economist Albert Hirschman said people facing a broken institution have two available moves: exit or voice. Leave entirely or stay and complain from the inside and hope somebody with power actually listens. Most of us don't get to exit. You can't just buy your way into a different housing market the way a fund manager can relocate capital with a few keystrokes. But there's a third move. It's the one that's actually available to you. Refuse. Not leaving, not asking nicely and hoping. From now on, declining to keep organizing your one life around a deal that has already proven it isn't going to pay you back. There's a name for the specific feeling rising in you right now hearing this. Psychologists call it reactance. First identified by Jack Brem in 1966. When a freedom gets threatened or taken, withheld past the point it was promised, something in a person doesn't shrink to fit the smaller space. It pushes back. It reasserts itself. It wants the thing back specifically because it was taken. That pushback you're feeling is this mechanism. It's your free will refusing to stay sold. Fixing the institutions isn't the fix because it's tempting to think it is. You can't outvote a pension fund's incentive structure. You can't shame a fund manager into fairness with a strongly worded comment. The only lever that was ever actually yours is to stop handing over your time on the old terms. Take back your freedom, not someday once conditions improve. Starting with the next decision you make after this video ends. 3 questions, but don't just let them play in your head and evaporate by dinner. Where, specifically, are you still performing loyalty to a system that has already shown you it's willing to breach the deal? What would it actually cost you in real, concrete terms to stop performing that loyalty this month? Go back to the start of this whole story. What did you trade away for safety that safety never actually gave you? A contract that only pays out for the people who wrote it isn't a contract. It's a leash with paperwork. You gave the freedom away yourself on purpose because it seemed like a reasonable trade at the time, which means it was yours to give away, which means it's yours to take back. Free will is an act of rebellion.